And we're off. All right. Well, thank y'all for joining us. Today is April 1st, April Fool's Day. This is not a joke. This is a real thing. And we're all here alive and well, hopefully. Um, this is our first informational interview with Tamara Lash. Listen, question, grow. All right. So we're going to go through a few things. First and foremost, the overview, what's happening today. We're going to do a quick overview, then we're going to jump into the interview, then we'll open up for student questions, and then we'll wrap up and have a reflection, and then the call around 5. All right. So first and foremost, just want to point out, these are some businesses who have sponsored Passion Impact in the past. We definitely encourage you to support them as you can, if you can. Publicize them as best as possible. Sometimes you can get takeout if it's a restaurant, or you can go shopping there in rare circumstances. But just want to recognize them because they have done so much to help us in the past. We want to make sure that they get recognized. So moving forward, they can stay open. With that being said, a little bit of a housekeeping here. Just meeting expectations. We show gratitude and respect for all of those in the video chat. It doesn't matter who it is. We're going to show that. If you're muted, which you are now, the facilitator can unmute you when you raise your hand during appropriate times. And speaking of appropriate times, when you have a question, write it down. And when it gets to the student section, you'll raise your hand. So I want everybody to practice raising your hand in this meeting. So find that little button that says raise your hand. It's under the participants button. So you should see a little hand pop up. All right, I see Alan, I see Mary, I see, who else? I don't see anybody else. I need to see hands raised just so that you know how to do it later. Oh, that's a high five, Christina. There's another section under it says participants. Okay, we got it. Tamara, we got Danny. Nice. Kayla and Christina, nice. Awesome. Danya, nice. Kayla, did you find it already? Struggling over here. Struggle fest. Kayla, put the glasses on to be smart. She can do it. We know she can. Kayla, if you don't find it, that's okay. We'll figure it out later. Go ahead and lower your hands now, please. Everybody just lower them. We know you have more questions. We'll get to them later. Last thing, couple things here. No nudity, vulgar or demeaning language, or inappropriate sharing of your screen will be tolerated. We do reserve the right to remove any individual from our program, so just know that up front. The last thing here is just have fun, stay engaged. So without further ado, let's talk about Tamara Lash. Now this woman, she is a spectacular woman. She graduated from Oregon State University, has multiple things of educational reference behind her name. She's going to get into all of this. She worked at the Cultural Resource Center there, served in AmeriCorps, currently second year graduate at OSU, and is also working with the Trailblazers. So without further ado, I'm going to be quiet and pass off the mic to Tamara. Tamara, welcome.
You're like a radio host. I would just like to say, like, you're so good at that. I was like, wow. Okay, Stefan, go off. But my name's Tamara. I am a second year grad student at Oregon State University studying college student services and administration with a focus in multicultural student support. I went to Oregon State for my undergrad as well, where I got a degree in human development and family sciences with a minor in political science. And I did a bunch of stuff while I was there, but the two big things that take up a good chunk of my time now are grad school. And in grad school, I have an assistantship with our Women and Gender Center, working with women of color. So supporting the undergraduate students in that capacity, and we do super cool things in that realm of life. And then I also get to work with the Portland Trailblazers and do diversity, equity, and inclusion programming for them over there. Did you mute him?
Oh, there you go. I muted myself. Oh my goodness. Cool. I'm gonna just stop sharing here so we can really focus on you in speaker view. Because I'm still messing around with this, trying to figure out the best way. Awesome, great. So thank you for that introduction, Tamara. To start us off, obviously, like, you've had a lot of life experiences. I want to rewind real quick. This was not on the questions, but I want you to put yourself back in your high school shoes, your senior year. What were you thinking? Where were you going to go? What was going to happen in your life at that time?
Oh God, I had no clue. So I grew up in a military family, just some background. We would move every 3 to 4 years. And before I decided to go to Oregon State, which truly was on a whim, we were living in Okinawa, Japan. And so that was a really weird place to be because I didn't necessarily have the like college visits and doing things like that. A lot of it was online research and remote things through College Board. Which is like so funny. And College Board, I like went in and I put in the different things that I wanted out of a school or a university. And Oregon State literally popped up and I decided to go there because I liked the trees. Like I'm not lying. On the webpage, there was like all of the trees and they were changing colors. And I had never lived in a place that had seasons before. My mom's from Hawaii and she really wanted me to go back home to Hawaii to go to school. And I like to think that I like to take risk and go to new places and do new things that maybe are kind of scary. But I think moving every 3 to 4 years and having to get to connect with new people kind of gave me the tools and the capacity to do that. And so that's where I was like, okay, like Oregon State's the place to go. I took like a couple of AP classes when I was in high school and I was involved in cheer and soccer. So I tried to have like some stuff in my high school, like toolkit, I would say, so that I was marketable to different colleges. Because we were living in Okinawa, Japan, I didn't have the opportunity to engage in a lot of volunteer activities or experiences. So I think Passion Impact is really cool because not only do you get to connect with different organizations and volunteer, but you're also building your like networking. So as you connect with people in Portland, you're also connecting with people that potential like will be potential employers, which is something I didn't necessarily get to have in Okinawa, but I tried to do a lot once I got to Oregon State.
Cool. And that's definitely like the downside of being a traveling student, but I'm sure that you had a lot of great experiences having education all over this world. Definitely a cool opportunity. But let's think about that moment that you got accepted to OSU. You decided to commit to it. Did you know what the major was that you were going to study? And if not, how did you choose
Oh no, again, I was a hot mess. This is a theme through my life. Um, I went in and I just thought I was going to be like a psych major. And then I was like, ooh, I don't want to go to grad school, and psychology majors have to go to grad
it?
school. So I switched my major to do education. And then I quickly realized that education, you also have to go to grad school. And again, didn't want to go to
Mm.
grad school. So I switched it again to human development and family sciences. And then I toggled around with different options. So there's like an option for child development, there's an option for like kind of volunteering and working with nonprofits and different things like that. And I just moved it around, like all the options around a bunch until I found what worked for me. Luckily, I had like a general consensus like within me that I knew I wanted to work with people and I knew I wanted to do like some sort of civic engagement and change. And so those were kind of the paths that led me to my major of human development and family sciences. And then once I was at Oregon State and I got connected to cultural resource centers, I realized that a lot of great advocacy happens through like public policy and like the political fields. And so that's where my poli sci minor popped on because I was like, wow, like this is really neat. I think I might want to be a lawyer, which I don't know why I thought that because I am too nervous of a person to do that type of thing. And then I thought I wanted to be a lobbyist. So like going in and lobbying for like either animal rights or for like social justice things. But I found that really the human development stuff and the like mesh of poli sci gave me a good like educational background to go into a plethora of different fields to look for work.
So you talked about starting off with psychology and education, and then really realizing that people is where you wanted to be, like serving people in some form of capacity. Was it because you had chose those two majors to begin with that you realized that, or was there something that was as far reaching back as your childhood that you were like, wow, I've actually kind of wanted to do this my whole life? Where did that stem from?
Yeah, I would say it probably was a mix of both. So my mom, like since we were in a military family, we moved every 3 to 4 years. I feel like a lot of the work that my mom did was around volunteering, because that's what she could tap into really easily. And she was always working with people and helping them out in that capacity. And I look up to her. She's like my number one woman in my life. And so I like wanted to be like her, and I still want to be like her when I grow up. Um, and I think also getting involved in extracurricular activities when I was on college campus, like that helped me figure out a little bit more what I wanted to do. And so I was a part of Delta 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 sorority, and in that we do philanthropic work. And so getting to see how we connected with people in that regard. And then my big in the sorority worked for the student government at Oregon State. And so
Nice.
I just got really connected in all of these different places. And it was the like hands-on learning that also helped to steer me into where I wanted to go. And I mean, like psychology is a mix of like people too, right? Like you're looking at people in psychology. And so I realized that I failed my first psych test. Like I straight up got an F, and then I
Oh.
cried, and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, I think I'm just dropping out. Like, I don't know, school maybe isn't for me. But I took the time, I like worked really hard, and I got my grade up in that class. But I realized that I like just don't do the synapses and the science stuff. I'm more of like a soft science
Mm.
thing, person, human. And I like the writing and I like the reading, and theory is good, but like the sciencey stuff is just not for me.
But at some point you were like, I still like to write. I'm going to find the way that I can use writing in these things. And most of the time you have to read and write in college.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good that you're able to use that. I want to fast forward a little bit here. You obviously have held some leadership positions in college. You got really involved, and you said Delta Delta Delta. I've heard Tri Delta. Is that the
Mm-hmm.
same thing? Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Um, from those extracurricular experiences, what do you think the most important gem or nugget that you can take away from those has been in helping guide your life after college?
Mm. I would think like just be confident in the skills that you have and recognize that you do have skills. And so in Tri Delta, the way that you get put into leadership positions is that people nominate you. Like you don't
Mm.
campaign for them. Like you don't say, hey, I want to do X, Y, or Z. Like people see something within you, and then they'll nominate you for that position. So in Tri Delta, I was the house manager, and then I was our vice president of chapter development. And so I was over all of our ritual, and then like was the head of standards, which is kind of like the principal's office. So and people saw that within me, right? And it wasn't something that I necessarily like saw within myself at the moment, but as I stepped into those roles, and then as I moved over to the cultural resource centers and got leadership roles in that space, I learned how to be confident in myself. And as people, I learned something from Dominic Christina, who is like a phenomenal poet, and she says, as you like stand up and are feeling confident in who you are, like look around and see the other people who are standing up beside you, because you're making space for them to be their authentic selves. And so
Mm.
that's something I try to carry with me too, especially as I step into meetings with the Blazers or going into places, and just recognizing that I was hired for a reason. I have a lot of good content knowledge, and people like should listen to what I have to say. And so even before this, I went into a meeting and I like took over a good chunk of the meeting, but because I feel like what I had to say was important.
Mm.
And then what I had to say was also received really well. So that was nice too.
It's really interesting. You also mentioned that like it didn't seem as though you saw that confidence in yourself. Sir Richard Branson, the CEO of Virgin Atlantic, I'm going to paraphrase a quote. He said, "If someone asks you to take on a leadership position, and you have no clue how to do it, say yes and figure it out along the way." Do you feel like that's what you did, or you were like, I kind of already know how to do this, and people believe in me? How did that kind of unfold for you?
Oh, 100%. Like I said, the theme of a hot mess. I just figure it out along the way and I stumble. I feel like I get really lucky that I can like stumble into these positions, but as much as it is luck, I'm realizing that it's the hard work that I put into it too. And so things aren't necessarily just falling into my lap, but I put in a lot of hard work that people are recognizing
Hmm.
to get me into where I'm at. And I don't know anything. But and I feel like people say like the more that you learn, the more you realize that you don't know anything. I like to quote a lot of people. I read a lot of books, but I think that's a big thing as well. And so I have come into a lot of roles where I'm the first person who's ever been in that space. So like in my assistantship, I'm the first person who was like the GA or the graduate assistant for the Women of Color Initiative. I'm the first ever equity and inclusion intern at the Trailblazers. I was the first person to go into my AmeriCorps school that I was stationed in. And so there was no like roadmap for me and I had to kind of figure it out on my own. And I think going into spaces and having to figure it out on my own also made me a better leader because I recognized what I needed and then how I can give that to the people who come after me.
Cool. And you mentioned the AmeriCorps, and I wanted to jump into this too, specifically because was that your first position out of college?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure if everybody knows what AmeriCorps members are. I honestly didn't know until I was years out of college, which was such a kind of a letdown just to know that I could have had such great experiences. But not everybody chooses to be an AmeriCorps member, not just because they don't know, but because they don't think it's worth their time. Why did you choose to become an AmeriCorps member, and how has that helped you grow after college?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes back to my mom again. So when we were in Hawaii, she worked for this organization called Keikioka Aina, and it's like it translates to Children of the Land, and it's this organization that works with Native Hawaiian families to give them curriculum for pre-K kids if they can't get into Head Start. And that was an AmeriCorps position. Like she got into it
Oh,
because she like was friends with the people who run the organization, but then she also like was then a part of AmeriCorps. Like it just fell into her lap, and I saw everything that it did for her. And again, I knew I wanted to work with people. I didn't know in what capacity I wanted to work with people after grad school, and I still was floating around the idea of going to elementary school education and like being a teacher in that capacity. And so I was like, this is a perfect realm for me to kind of test the waters for that. And so in that role, I was stationed at a middle school in San Diego where I worked with underserved youth. It was like one of the most challenging jobs I've ever had because they were walking into the classroom with like so much on their backs. And it was really hard to like pay attention to math when you're trying to figure out how you're going to get home because a lot of them like had to take the city bus in because they didn't have buses for them. And so like thinking about how you're going to get home, what you're going to eat, and then trying to do math was just like not even on their radar. But it was the most rewarding time of my life. And they were so like they were funny. They were really, really funny. They did some sketchy stuff in my classroom. Like they tried to give each other stick and poke tattoos, and I had to like compensate their like thingy mabob. Um, but
what?
yeah, no, I was
Wow.
shook. Like that was not my life, and so it opened me up to seeing other people's lives too, and like just
Wow.
the spectrum where kids are coming into the classroom and just trying to be as empathetic as I could possibly be. I think I really learned how to like tap into my empathy skills in that role. And it gives you like a good chunk of money for college. So I
Mm,
have like since I was going to into AmeriCorps after college, I like am using the money to pay off student loans,
cool.
which is really amazing. But it also like just looks really good on your resume. Like people are super into AmeriCorps because you're giving up a year of your life to you don't make a lot, but you have really rich experiences. And so like you can even do AmeriCorps right out of high school. Some programs are like, oh yeah, come on, you're 18, like let's do whatever you want to do. So if you want to take a gap year between high school and going to undergrad, that's totally an option as well.
That is a fantastic point, like the educational benefits coming from the stipends you receive. You were living at basically the poverty line
Mhm.
in terms of that stipend. Um, and so now that you've graduated from that and have moved on to this internship with the Trailblazers and um, your grad program. I'm curious as to like where you're at mentally and how that experience prepared you for this.
Oh my God, yeah. So like you're saying, I was living at the poverty line in California. It's out of control in prices of everything. So when I was doing AmeriCorps there, I was on food stamps. And then like coming back here, because my dad was in the military, I get VA money and then I get my stipend from being a graduate assistant. And I also receive pay from the Trailblazers. So I'm just like in a completely different like money setup. So I feel like I have that weight off my shoulder, but I am still empathetic to the students then around me and just the folks around me in general. I think especially at the Blazers, because you think like, oh, this big organization, everybody's getting paid a ton of money, and that's not necessarily the case, especially as we're looking at our guest experience staff. So like the people who are like at the front doors checking your bags, or like the people who are giving you food in the arena. Um, they are like also at the poverty line in what they're making. And so just being really empathetic to where people are coming at. I'm working on this big project for like my final of grad school, and I'm talking about like equitable budgeting. And so
Hmm.
making sure that you are allocating funds to folks dependent on what they need, and making sure that you're investing in diverse suppliers. And so diverse suppliers look like
Hmm.
people who are like women-owned businesses, people of color-owned businesses. If there's like disability folks who own businesses, making sure that you're investing back into those people. And so I definitely think my AmeriCorps experience gave me a really good like class lens to life. It also gave me really good skills in budgeting my time,
Hmm.
because AmeriCorps is like out of control. Like they will work you. Like you're going to work a lot. So I did like 9-hour days with no breaks. And it was really, really intense. And so I had to learn how to budget my time and to also like invest in self-care at the end of the day, which I think is really important and not talked about enough. And so making sure that when I came home from work, and it was difficult because the students I was working with had really hard lives, and so it's easy to take what they tell you home and like keep mulling it over. But I had to create a practice where like, okay, I'm going to get into my car, I'm going to turn on a podcast, and this is like my end of the day routine. So I'm transitioning out of like a work mindset and going into a relaxing or school mindset, whatever it may be. And so it gave me those skills to kind of be okay, like mental health wise, because
Yeah.
even in grad school, I am juggling a lot with like the students that I'm supporting in Corvallis, and then like my personal schoolwork, and then my work with the Trailblazers. And so having some time that I'm like setting aside to reinvest in myself is really important, and I think not talked about enough.
So on that note, actually, I'm not sure that everybody watching now or potentially later will know the definition of self-care, and we all have our own. So I'm curious as to how you define self-care.
Yeah. For me, self-care, I think a lot of people talk about it as like getting your nails done or like doing a massage or whatever it is. And I think those are all different forms of self-care, and they're really neat and amazing, but they also like funnel back into capitalism. And I don't know if everybody knows what capitalism is, but like basically these structures of money power. And so like, again, like who are you investing your money into? And so for me, self-care kind of looks like getting into a meditative practice. So like, do you have time where you can sit by yourself and kind of practice like deep breathing, and being mindful of where you're at? And so like, you're not really paying any money to that, but you're being connected with yourself. Self-care looks like journaling, and so being really reflective about like what has happened throughout my day, what do I need, what do I need to practice. And I'm like one of those like woo-woo people that like to read tarot cards. So I got a deck of tarot
Nice.
cards, and I've been reading those every now and again, and like reading Adriana's cards and my mom's cards, and I have my dog like walk on the cards and I read his cards. And so that has been really fun. And like
That's cool.
self-care thing for me that I like to engage in. And it's also helpful too, because I think especially like in this time period where everything's so heavy, if you can have something that kind of is a little bit more light and fun.
Yes, That sounds like a great definition of self-care. So thank you for
I
that.
can read your card, Stefan, if you want.
I will let you do that, and you can keep it to yourself. I'm honestly terrified a little bit of that stuff. We have about 3.5, 4 more minutes here with me before we open this up to student questions. So I hope I'm not taking anybody's questions now. But I just wanted to touch on a few last things. I'll let students jump on, like potentially like what your job is with the Trailblazers, because I know you're really excited about that. Two parts to that. First and foremost, what do you wear at your job?
I'm so happy you asked this. And I know Adriana told you to, but like I am obsessed with clothing. And so I mean like what I have on right now is just like a t-shirt and jeans. But when I was looking at a place to work or like to intern or wherever it is, I wanted to be in a place where I felt comfortable and where I could express myself. And so I feel like clothing and like tattoos or piercings or whatever it may be is a way for us to express our individuality. And so I would also like push for folks, like if you're looking for positions or jobs, like don't be afraid to ask, like when they ask you questions at the end, like do you have any questions, like yeah, what do you wear, like what's a normal day, like what do you expect of your people, because you want to be comfortable in wherever you're going into. That's like my biggest thing, because if you're not comfortable in like how you're dressed, then you're not going to be able to do your work really well. And so that is something super impactful. And I mean, I know that changes too based off of the like job field you're going into. So like if you're in like super high business, maybe you need to wear a suit every day. I know that's not for me. So I'm definitely going to go to a place where I can wear like my overalls if I feel like it, or
Nice.
like athleisure is really big because the Trailblazers is a sports team. So like we can kind of get away with some of that stuff.
I've
And
never heard that
so
word. Athleisure.
really,
That's a
it's
great
like
word. I love
athletic
it.
clothes, like yeah. So I don't
So
know,
good.
I love that. I love that about the Blazers, because they really work with you. And I think about like too, the word professional, for a really long time was used to be like exclusive of people of color and to
Mm,
be exclusive, like in a class way. And so, if people didn't have money to buy a suit, which tended to be people of color, then they weren't going to get the job. And so, as we transition into new places where we can like wear different things that are more expressive, or maybe like not that three-piece suit that we're supposed to be wearing, we're creating a space where more folks can come in and do really awesome work, because your clothes shouldn't say what you can or cannot do.
awesome. Thank you for that. Last question here before we open it up. Looking at your resume, just look at it in your mind. What is the one most important thing that you have on your resume?
Mm. Well, Adriana told me to do this, so shout out to her. But I think the most important thing I have on my resume is she told me to like confine the things that I've done up at the top in like 3 to 4 bullet points. And so I did that and I was like, wow, this is the smartest thing ever, because it kind
Mm,
of like gives people a snapshot of everything on there. So you could do like 5 million things. And I've talked to HR and our recruiters at the Trailblazers, so I know this, that they don't necessarily look at it all. So if
huh.
you have places where you're giving them like really quick snapshots of everything that you've done, that's like super key, because then it'll draw people in. And so it's like a taster, like an appetizer,
Mhm.
that like little 3-piece snapshot of like, oh, I've had 5+ years of diversity work. I've had 5+ years of like training and leading workshops and things like that. So people can kind of tap into that. And then if they want to learn more, they can dig into my resume or my cover letter and see what that has.
That's really cool. Thank you for that advice. Summary of qualifications from Adriana as
Yeah.
the originator of the idea.
Mm-hmm.
What I'd like to do now is open it up to students who have questions. Please raise your hand, and Adriana, the bouncer, will choose to unmute you one at a time. So for those of you who have questions, go for it now. And Kayla, if you still don't know how to raise your hand, you can type it in there. Oh, you found it out.
He's
Cool.
doing it once.
Wow. Yeah, I found it. I was looking at the top. Okay. Have you ever met any of the basketball players? Or
Yeah, actually.
Nathan Lillard?
Yeah, I have actually. So like what we do, and like if you work with the Trailblazers or if you intern with the Trailblazers, which I definitely think people should look into in the future, whenever, certain internships like specifically work with them. And so the equity and inclusion intern falls within the social responsibility team who does a lot of our player events. And so I got to go to the hospitals when they visited the children's hospitals with them. And I was like super jazzed because I was in Damian Lillard's group and Carmelo Anthony's group. And so I like got to hang out with them. I got a beanie. It was like a really good time. But we also do media day. And so media day is a day that like all of the players come down to Moda Center because they don't actually work there. Like I work up at Moda Center, but the players are down at the practice facility in Tualatin. And so on media day, they're all up at Moda. And you can't hang out with them, but they like walk around. They have like different guides that walk around. And so I was at the basketball signing table. So I got to like rotate basketballs for them to sign. But that's where I saw like all of them because they all have to come through and sign the basketballs because we auction them off.
That's
Cool.
yeah.
Kayla, thank you. Oh, sorry. Keep going. Sorry.
Oh no, yeah, that was my question. That's really cool.
Cool. Thank you, Kayla.
Yeah, one of my questions I have was one of the things you said was budgeting your time on the AmeriCorps. And I was wondering, like, was there like a process to that? Like, do you get used to it over time, or was like speed bumps along the way?
There was like a ton of speed bumps along the way. And so I'm definitely someone where I'll like throw myself into my work. And even though I was already working 9 hours a day, I would like push it to 12 hours. I would like do everything I possibly could. And it was when I started to feel like I was burning out and that like I couldn't do it anymore that I really had to sit down with myself and be honest and say like, hey, like this is not sustainable. And so it took me a while to get into a practice of like, this is what I'm going to do to end my day. Like I know when I get into my car, I'm going to turn on the podcast and it's going to be like, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. For like my core work in AmeriCorps, I had to like do a lot of like administrative stuff. So I had to keep a ton of paperwork on all the kids that I worked with. And then I also was running different groups. And so I had to budget my time with that as well of like, I'm going to have 2 hours of paperwork or administrative tasks that I'll do at the end of the day when the kids are gone. And then I'll have like 3 to 4 hours in the middle of the day where I'm working on groups with them. And then I'll have some time where I go into their classrooms strategically. But again, that all was like a massive learning curve. And I had to figure out what worked for me. Because some people in AmeriCorps would do their administrative work in the morning and some would do it in the middle of the day. But for me, again, like I knew I wanted to be with the kids as much as possible. So I tried to plan my days and budget my time around them and when I could be with them.
That's a great question, Alan. Just a real quick request, Tamara. I actually didn't ask you this at the beginning, but could you give us your pronouns if that's okay with you?
Oh yeah, she, her.
Awesome, cool. For the next people who ask their questions, just give us a quick little introduction, name, pronouns. So potentially if we refer back to you, we're not mispronouncing you. I wanted to touch on one quick thing, and if this is taking your question, Christina, I'm so sorry. You mentioned burnout in Alan's answer to Alan's question. I'm not sure if everybody knows what burnout is. Can you just talk a little bit to burnout, what that is?
Yeah. So for me, burnout looks like operating on autopilot. And so I like to pride myself in being really present in the moment and like tapping into my like active listening skills and really getting to hone in and like building relationships and rapport with people. And so when I feel like I'm burning out, I'm not necessarily being as engaged or active in the moment. I'm kind of just going through the motions of I'm here, I'm doing what I need to do, and then I'm leaving. And yeah, senioritis for sure, Caleb. That is like the epitome of burnout. And so it's like really sad. I like hate that I think we live in a society that kind of breeds burnout because it focuses on task before relationship. And so I, again, like try to just step back and think about how can I center relationships as opposed to task, in like aiding burnout. And something that I think that is really important for folks to like take some time to think through is burnout looks different for everybody, and only you can tell like when you're starting to burn out. And so someone asked me like, hey Tamara, when do you know that you're beginning to burn out? And so for me, it's like my sleep patterns are like off the wall and not really great. I'm not eating, I'm not drinking enough water, and like slowly I'll like fall into this spiral. And so like I would suggest that folks take some time and kind of name like, how do you know when you're starting to burn out? And then maybe share that with someone who you're like comfortable with or like in relationship with or whatever it may be. Maybe it's each other on VEP, because then those people can hold you accountable and be like, hey Mary, I'm just reading names of the participants on the side, like, hey Mary, I see that like you're not eating or you're not sleeping, so like I just wanted to check in and see if you like needed help or support.
That's a really great suggestion. And something that stood out to me, the autopilot of tasks taking over versus the relationships. I've never really put that to words in terms of burnout. So thank you for that. Awesome. We're going to move along to the next person that Adriana the bouncer chooses.
I'm Christina. I go by she, her. Going off what you said and what Alan said, how were you able to balance your life socially and like budget your time at the same time?
Yeah. So again, like I'm someone who really focuses on relationship, and I think that's super important. I also would like to name I'm a massive introvert. Like this quarantine stuff is like hands down the best thing that probably ever happened to me because I'm thriving. Like I'm doing great. So I'm someone who has like maybe like 3 really good like strong connections in my life, and I think that also accounts to like moving every 3 to 4 years. But I think building in like some of your self-care to those like relationships or to that social interaction. And so if you like want to spend time with your friends or do whatever, I'm like personally someone who like will reserve weekends for that, because after like a long week or like after a long day, I know I don't have the mental or like brain capacity to like go out and do like X, Y, or Z thing, because that's just not what self-care is for me. So like that's not how I'm going to choose to budget my time. But I mean, like we all have our own wallets in this budget, weird analogy I just made up. And so like you can choose to like put your coins into something different than me, and that'll make sense for you because that's where like you need to be at in that moment. And so I would just like say, again, like going back to journaling, take some time maybe and like journal like what fills your cup and like what's sucking energy from you or like taking things from you, and then budget accordingly to like, okay, I want to spend more time doing like reading some books. Like I want to spend some more time with Alan. I don't know, like, and then like lean into that and like make sure that you're scheduling time to do that.
Great. Thank you for that. Christine, if you do have more questions on that, feel free to raise your hand again. All right, Adriana the bouncer, who's next?
Hi, I'm Mary. I go by she and her. And what are like your main responsibilities as an intern for like the Trailblazers?
Yeah, with the Blazers, I do a lot. And I would like to give the caveat that they shouldn't, like, not all interns do all of this work that I'm doing. And so with them, I help with curriculum development. And so I build a lot of the curriculum for all staff trainings around diversity, equity, and inclusion. So the call that I was on right before I hopped on this was to plan our training around microaggressions. In that, I coordinate monthly trainings for all staff. And so those are things that I reach out to different Portland nonprofits to do in collaboration with. And so we've done some workshops with Latino Network and NEA and different organizations like that. And I also help with like resources. So like resourcing our staff. And so something that I've been working on is like a massive resource guide to make sure that we're not only having conversations around diversity, equity, and inclusion, in our trainings, but that folks have the tools and the resources to then pull it into the work that they're doing. And so I also do, I lead our part-time inclusion council. And in that space, that's where I'm working with the folks who like work in the arena, who are checking your tickets or whatever it may be, and thinking through the ways in which we can fold in DEI into their like roles. And then I support our full-time inclusion council.
It's interesting that you talked about the curriculum development, the monthly trainings, because you also referred to your second major as being in education. And it's somewhat of like a nice little marriage of this idea of being able to still educate people, but something that you're super passionate about in the social justice realm. So it's kind of cool how those have, kind of connected together. Awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
They definitely work in tandem. And I mean, like, I'm in grad school right now for College Student Services Administration, but like my passion and my goal is to work in like diversity, equity, and inclusion and social justice stuff. And so I didn't know I could do that for the Trailblazers, or like other sports teams are hopping on that that bandwagon now too. And so like pulling in my education background is really impactful for those spaces, because then I have like different content knowledge that the folks working in like the Trailblazer organization or in different organizations don't have, which is really good when we think about like learning and development opportunities for our professional staff.
Yes, huge. Awesome. Hey, thank you, Mary, for that question. We're going to move on to the next question.
Hi, my name is Danny. I use she, her pronouns. I was just wondering, when you were at OSU, and you were changing majors, who did you rely on, or who helped you through that the most?
Mm-hmm. So I like went to my advisor, like they were the best person in my entire life, because I was like, I don't know what I want to do. I want to do this. I want to do that. This is what interests me. This is where I'm like unsure. And I really relied on them because they have the knowledge of like what I need to get done and what classes will help me get to where I need to be. So that was my biggest supporter. And also, weird fun fact, my advisor from my first year of undergrad ended up being my advisor for graduate school. And so it was like a weird like mix of events, but they've been very helpful and supportive.
That's super coincidental. And that's probably great that the relationship was there and established early on.
Mm-hmm. And so Adriana asked what an advisor is. And so an advisor in like the college realm and sense of life is someone that helps to walk you through the different class options that you can take in the different majors. And so at Oregon State University and many college campuses, there's a bunch of different like mini colleges within the big college. And so my degree of human development and family sciences fell within the College of Public Health and Human Sciences. And so within there, I was paired up with an academic advisor who told me what classes I would be taking, who told me about different opportunities to intern at places, and really made sure that I was on track to graduate.
Awesome. Thank you for that question from Adriana and Danny. Let's move on to the last hand that I see raised.
Sorry I didn't introduce myself last time. My name's Alan. I go by he, him. And one of the things I want to ask about is the meditation you said a minute ago. Like, are you more of a type of person who be like, they can just sit down and meditate, or do you need like outside help with music and stuff? I just want to understand that.
Yeah, definitely outside help, because again, hot mess express over here. So like there's the app Headspace. There's a bunch of different apps that you can log into that help to guide you through meditation. And also YouTube is like a great free place you can go get guided through meditation. I think there's also some things to be said about like mantras per se. And so like if you have a quote that you really like, you can meditate on that quote. And so if like my grandma used to tell me all is well, and I have the tattoo on my arm, that's why I'm pointing at it. But so if I wanted to like take some time and sit down and be like, okay, all is well, all is well, all is well, and just kind of repeat that to myself. Or even a meditative practice, and maybe this is like skewing it from what real meditation is, but whatever, meditative practice of like, what does all is well mean to me, and then how am I applying that to my life? And so it's really like a mindfulness thing and being present in the moment and being attentive to my breath. And so we need to breathe to be alive, and we like oftentimes don't pay attention to our breath and how important it is. And so I also try to like take deep breaths throughout the day, just to ground myself and to recenter and recognize that like I'm here, I'm present, and then like move on to with whatever I need to do.
Awesome. Great question, Alan. Great question. Are there any other questions? We have time for maybe two, but probably just one more question.
Adrienne asked one in the chat.
Would you be able to explain the Cultural Resource Center, or what they are, and their purpose, and what you do at them?
Yeah, the Cultural Resource Centers are the coolest place you can ever go on a college campus. No lie. No cap. They are like really, really fun. And they're places where folks can go to find community. So if at Oregon State, we have 7 cultural resource centers. We have the Lonnie B. Harris Black Cultural Center. We have the Central Cultural Cesar Chavez, the Asian Pacific Islander Cultural Resource Center, the Native American Longhouse, the Women's Center, the Women and Gender Center, we just changed our name, the Pride Center, and Etihad, who focuses on the what region is that? Middle Eastern region. And then we have Seoul LGBTQ Multicultural Connect support group. And then I work for AYA, which is our Women of Color initiative. But basically these spaces are a place for folks to go to find community and hang out. The Women and Gender Center is straight up like a little blue house by the library, and it has the comfiest couches ever, and we have a TV, and we have music going all the time, and coffee and tea, and people can come hang out. All of them at Oregon State have free printing, so like from an equity standpoint, we want to make sure that people can engage in their coursework and get what they need so they can print in those spaces. We have computers. The Cultural Resource Centers also have books. And so if you need a book for class, but you can't pay for it, you can check out a book from the CRCs and like have it for the term and then just bring it back whenever you need to. But we do a bunch of different programming, and yeah, it's like really cool. I have a good time there.
That is fascinating. And I know that Danny is smiling because she's going to be going to OSU and potentially engaging in some of those cultural resource centers.
Yeah.
So that sounds really fantastic. Well, we have about 1 minute left. Are there any last questions? Any last questions? All right, 3, 2, 1. All right, I'm going to share my screen once more. Let's do a quick wrap up here. Just passion, impact, style, reflection wise, what I'd like for you to do in answering some of these questions, go ahead and type them in your chat box. I just realized I probably can't even read the chat box. So what I'll probably do is ask Tamara to recite some of the things that y'all write about. What did you learn from this interview that you're excited about? How can you use this information moving forward? And how can passion impact improve this experience for future interviews? So go ahead and write some ideas in there. If you have 1 answer, if you have 3, if you have 50, great, throw them in there. Tomorrow, when you start seeing them, just start reading them off, see what you got.
Okay. College and the twisting roads that await me. Very true. The Portland Trailblazers have an internship. They actually have 17.
Oh,
17
wow.
internships. And they're across the whole organization. So they have like mine, obviously. They have social media. Well, no, they don't. They have ones that do like video stuff. So I don't know, like if you're techie, they have IT people. literally so many internships. So definitely look into them because they're a great opportunity. And I was told that like if you want to get into the sports industry world, that internships are basically like your first job.
That is a great point. Any time that you see an internship and you have the ability and chance to do it, go for it, for sure, especially in Trailblazers.
Mm-hmm. Experiment what to do and what not to do. Retweet.
Very nice. Anybody else have some thoughts they'd like to put down? Oh, there we go.
This made me think to go to OSU. Yeah, come hang out. I learned about the multiple diverse resources at OSU, and I'm excited to go there next year and learn that meditation is important and to notice when I'm crashing. Connections equal networking equal important. No, not UO. Blue Ducks, go Beavs. Yep. Excited that I learned about the importance of incorporating self-care into time budgeting. The idea of thinking about what fills my cup and what takes away from my cup excites me because I think it will be very helpful in figuring my schedule out.
Very nice. Very nice. Awesome. Well, I want to wrap up this part and I'm going to move on. Oh, Alan's got one more thing.
Yes. Passion Impact can improve my experience by providing me with brain food.
Alan, I'm going to send you just some ramen in a box. How about that? Okay, cool. That's good. That's good to know. Awesome. Real quick, I want to touch on the next upcoming events we have. Next Monday, well, let's start with the rest of this week over here. So on Friday, let's start with Thursday. Wow, I'm really all over the place here. I'm just going to start at the top. Next Monday, every Monday, calling all students who read and write Cantonese, Russian, and Spanish as well. We had Danya and Mary and Brittany all join us on Monday. We're translating the website so that we can give that to parents. So that was really great. We're having that every Monday from 1 to 2:30. Next Monday, Nadia Rodella is an English language classroom assistant, and she'll be speaking to us from Madrid. It'll be midnight there, while it's 4 to 5 here. But don't worry, she'll tell you about the culture too. So excited for her, and our own Adriana will be facilitating that conversation. Also, whoops, there's me going all over the place again. Weekly discussions on Tuesday, every Tuesday. Y'all had a discussion yesterday. I heard it went really, really well. Those happen every Tuesday. The articles come out on Mondays, so if you're interested, make sure that you get on that. On Thursday, we have our Connectors communication team. So if you want to help with newsletters, social media posts, interviews, blogs, vlogs, and more, you can join that. We are accepting, I think, 3 to 4 more students for that. We meet every Thursday from 3 to 4:30. Today we had our first workout session with Kayla and Christina. Let me tell you what, y'all, I'm tired. I'm tired after that workout. My legs hurt, my abs hurt. That was a great workout. I'm definitely excited for next week. I told my roommate about it. He said, hell no. So I'm going to do it, but looking forward to it. On Fridays from 12 to 1, we have lunch with Mary and Alan. Looking forward to that. Some games, some talking, just some hanging out, good old fun. And then from 2 to 3 that afternoon on Fridays, we have fireside chats. Want to learn more about PI, current events, just hang out. There's other things coming down the pipeline on that one. So the last bit here is if you want to subscribe to our newsletter, go to passionimpact.org/subscribe. And if any of these events seem interesting to you, you can register here at passionimpact.org/teleprogramming. So with that, I want to say thank you, Tamara, so much for your time. You were fantastic. You provided us all with some insight. I feel like I just learned so much. I'm like, man, I went through my experience in college way differently and wrong. But we really, really appreciated your time and your preparation for this. So if you do have a chance to be unmuted by our bouncer, Adriana, maybe we can all give you a yippee or a cheers or something along those lines. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tamara. All right, y'all.
Thanks.
Have a great day. Rest of your day. Go rest after that workout, and we'll see you at the next programming. See y'all later.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.